The biggest mistake people make after getting away from a narcissist is thinking that no contact is the ultimate revenge. It is not. There is something that breaks them far more deeply, and most survivors accidentally avoid doing it. By the end of this video, you will understand the one thing that makes a narcissist feel truly powerless, not because you hurt them, but because you removed the one advantage they always counted on. If you have ever wondered why a narcissist suddenly comes back months or even years later, or why they seem strangely obsessed after you have moved on, the answer is not as simple as missing you. It is about losing access to something they believed belonged to them. Stay until the end, because the final point explains why many survivors unknowingly keep feeding a narcissist even after going no contact. One of the biggest misunderstandings about narcissistic relationships is the belief that going no contact is automatically the most painful consequence a narcissist can experience. While no contact is an incredibly important boundary for protecting your mental health and creating space to heal, it is not necessarily the event that shakes them the most. What often has a much greater impact is something that develops after no contact has been maintained for a long time: your complete emotional independence. A narcissist can sometimes tolerate silence because silence leaves room for imagination. They may convince themselves that you are still thinking about them, waiting for them, or secretly hoping they will come back. As long as they believe they still occupy a significant place in your emotional world, they can preserve the illusion that their influence remains intact. The deeper blow comes when that illusion disappears. When you genuinely stop organizing your emotions around them, they lose something they relied on for validation. They are no longer the center of your decisions, your fears, your hopes, or your daily thoughts. Your happiness no longer depends on their approval, and your peace is no longer disrupted by their actions. That emotional shift is difficult for someone who depended on having psychological influence over another person. It signals that the control they once believed was permanent has faded. This is why recovery is so much more than blocking a phone number or avoiding a conversation. True freedom happens when you no longer measure your worth through their opinions or define your future by what happened in the relationship. The greatest change is not the silence between you. It is the moment your inner world no longer belongs to them. One of the most surprising truths about narcissistic dynamics is that intense emotional reactions can actually keep the connection alive. Many people believe expressing anger, demanding accountability, or repeatedly confronting a narcissist will somehow make them recognize the damage they have caused. In reality, these reactions often confirm that they still have emotional influence over you. Whether the emotion is love, frustration, sadness, or resentment, the common thread is that your attention remains focused on them. They continue to occupy space in your thoughts, and that ongoing emotional investment can reinforce their sense of importance. This is why genuine indifference can be so significant. Indifference does not mean pretending nothing happened or suppressing your emotions. It means reaching a place where their choices no longer dictate your mood, your confidence, or your peace of mind. You stop feeling compelled to explain yourself, defend your decisions, or prove your value. Their criticism loses its ability to define you, and their praise no longer feels necessary for your self-worth. Instead of reacting automatically, you respond thoughtfully, or sometimes not at all, because there is nothing left to prove. If you are still watching, you are already ahead of most people who never get this far. For someone who expected every interaction to produce an emotional response, this change can be deeply unsettling. Manipulation depends on predictable reactions. And when those reactions disappear, many of the old tactics lose their effectiveness. The conversations become shorter, the arguments fade away, and the emotional hooks no longer catch. Your energy gradually shifts toward your own goals, relationships, and well-being rather than remaining tied to their behavior. That quiet emotional detachment reflects genuine healing because it shows that your life is no longer organized around someone else's need for control or attention. Another reason emotional independence can be more unsettling to a narcissist than simple no contact is because it takes away their ability to control the story. In many narcissistic relationships, managing appearances is just as important as managing people. They often want to shape how others see them, presenting themselves as the victim, the hero, or the misunderstood partner while minimizing or denying the harm they caused. If they can influence the narrative, they can protect the image they have carefully built and avoid confronting uncomfortable truths about their behavior. When you are still emotionally caught in the relationship, you may spend a great deal of time defending yourself, explaining your side, or trying to convince others of what really happened. Ironically, this can keep you connected to the narcissist's version of events because your energy is still focused on responding to them. But as healing progresses, something important changes. You no longer feel the need to argue over every accusation or correct every false story. You become more interested in living your life than winning a debate about the past. That shift removes a powerful source of control. The narcissist can continue telling their version of events, but it no longer determines how you see yourself. Your identity becomes rooted in your own values rather than their opinions or public image. They lose the satisfaction of watching you chase validation or react to every distortion over time. Your calm consistency speaks louder than endless explanations. People who genuinely know you begin forming their own conclusions based on your actions, not on the stories they hear. The greatest disruption is not that you exposed them to everyone, it is that you stopped allowing their narrative to define your reality. One of the most difficult things for a narcissist to witness is not your sadness after the relationship ends. It is your genuine growth without them. During the relationship, they may have encouraged you to believe that you needed them to succeed, feel loved, or have confidence in yourself. Whether through subtle criticism, constant comparison, or unpredictable affection, they often create an environment where your self-worth becomes tied to their approval. Over time, you may begin doubting your own abilities and believing that happiness is only possible if they are part of your life. When you begin healing, that belief slowly falls apart. You start making decisions without seeking their validation. You reconnect with friends, pursue hobbies, focus on your career, or simply enjoy moments of peace that once felt impossible. Your confidence returns because it is no longer built on someone else's opinion. You begin trusting your own judgment again, and that quiet confidence changes the entire dynamic. For a narcissist, this can be deeply unsettling because your progress contradicts the story they wanted you to believe. If they convince themselves that you would always remain emotionally dependent on them, seeing you thrive creates a reality they cannot easily explain. It challenges the image they had of themselves as someone who was indispensable or uniquely important in your life. The more fulfilled and emotionally grounded you become, the less believable that image becomes. Your healing also removes the emotional leverage they once relied upon. The fears, insecurities, and doubts they could once trigger no longer produce the same reactions. Instead of looking back with longing, you begin looking ahead with purpose, proving through your actions that your future was never limited by their presence or defined by their absence. If this is helping you understand narcissistic behavior in a new way, take a moment to like this video, subscribe, and share it with someone who is struggling to break free emotionally. Understanding these patterns can save people years of confusion. Now let us look at what actually creates the deepest sense of loss for a narcissist. One of the most misunderstood aspects of narcissistic behavior is the role of emotional supply. Many people assume this only refers to admiration, compliments, or constant praise. But emotional supply is much broader than that. Any strong emotional reaction can reinforce a narcissist's sense of importance. Love, anger, fear, guilt, jealousy, desperation, and even repeated attempts to reason with them can all serve as reminders that they still have a significant influence over another person's emotional world. The specific emotion often matters less than the fact that they are still capable of creating it. This is why some narcissists seem just as satisfied after provoking an argument as they do after receiving admiration. If they can trigger a predictable response, they receive confirmation that they still matter. A long emotional message, an angry confrontation, or repeated efforts to make them understand the pain they caused can unintentionally demonstrate that they continue to occupy your thoughts. From their perspective, emotional emotional engagement often represents continued access and influence. The dynamic changes dramatically when that emotional investment disappears. Instead of reacting to every message, insult, or attempt to regain your attention, you begin responding with calm boundaries or no response at all. Your focus shifts toward your own healing, relationships, and future rather than remaining centered on their behavior. This does not happen overnight, but as your emotional energy returns to your own life, the source they once relied upon becomes unavailable. The absence of emotional supply is not about punishing them or playing games. It is the natural result of genuine recovery, where your attention is no longer consumed by someone else's need for validation, conflict, or control, and your peace becomes more valuable than any reaction they hope to provoke. One of the greatest sources of power in a narcissistic relationship is predictability. Over time, a narcissist often studies your emotional patterns, sometimes without you even realizing it. They learn what makes you feel guilty, what triggers your anxiety, what words cause you to defend yourself, and what actions are most likely to pull you back into the relationship. This knowledge allows them to use familiar tactics over and over because they know what response to expect. When your reactions become predictable, manipulation becomes much easier. This is why healing creates such a dramatic shift in the dynamic. As you recover, you begin recognizing the patterns instead of automatically reacting to them. A message that once would have sent you into panic now becomes something you can evaluate calmly. A guilt-inducing comment no longer forces you to explain yourself. An attempt to provoke jealousy or start an argument loses much of its impact because you understand the purpose behind it. Instead of responding emotionally, you pause, reflect, and choose what is healthiest for you. For someone who relied on predictable emotional responses, this change can be deeply frustrating. Their usual strategies stop producing the results they once did. The silent treatment no longer creates desperation. Unexpected compliments no longer erase past behavior. Sudden apologies no longer guarantee another chance. The emotional buttons they once pressed so easily seem to disappear. Odds are, your growing unpredictability does not come from playing mind games or trying to confuse them. It comes from becoming emotionally grounded and making decisions based on your own values instead of reacting to their behavior. When they can no longer anticipate how you will respond, they lose one of the most effective tools they once used to maintain influence, and the relationship no longer follows the script they had come to expect. For many narcissists, one of the hardest realities to accept is seeing someone build a fulfilling life without them. During the relationship, they may have subtly or openly encouraged the belief that you would never be as happy, successful, or loved if they were no longer part of your life. They might have criticized your abilities, questioned your decisions, or made you feel as though they were the reason for your confidence and stability. Over time, this can create the illusion that your future depends on their presence. When you begin creating a meaningful life on your own, that illusion starts to collapse. You develop healthier relationships, pursue personal goals, rediscover interests that were neglected, and gradually experience a sense of peace that once seemed impossible. Your happiness no longer relies on winning their approval or proving your worth. Instead, it grows from your own choices, values, and experiences. This quiet transformation sends a powerful message without you having to say a single word. For a narcissist, this can feel like a rejection of the role they believed they held in your life. If they viewed themselves as irreplaceable or uniquely important, watching you thrive challenges that belief. It suggests that their influence had limits and that your identity was never truly dependent on them. This can be difficult for someone whose self-image is built around feeling exceptional or indispensable. Your success is not about making them feel defeated or proving them wrong. It is about reclaiming the parts of yourself that were overshadowed during the relationship. As your confidence, stability, and emotional well-being continue to grow, your life becomes evidence that healing is possible and that your future is defined by your own resilience rather than by someone else's need for control. Many people believe that freedom begins the moment they block a narcissist's phone number, delete old messages, or walk away from the relationship. While those actions are often necessary and incredibly important, they represent only the beginning of the healing process. Physical distance creates safety, but psychological freedom is what brings lasting peace. It is entirely possible to have no contact with someone while still carrying them in your thoughts every day. If you constantly replay old conversations, imagine what you should have said, wonder whether they have changed, or hope they finally recognize your value, they continue to occupy emotional space in your life, even though they are physically absent. True emotional freedom arrives when your inner world no longer revolves around them. You stop measuring your progress by whether they miss you, regret losing you, or attempt to return. Their choices no longer determine your mood, your confidence, or your sense of self-worth. Instead of waking up wondering what they are thinking, you begin focusing on your own goals, relationships, health, and future. The energy that was once consumed by confusion and emotional exhaustion gradually becomes available for building a life that reflects your own values. This shift is often the most significant change because it cannot be manipulated or taken away. A narcissist may attempt to reconnect, provoke a reaction, or remind you of the past, but those efforts lose their effectiveness when they no longer control your emotional attention. Your peace comes from within rather than from anything they say or do. That is the point where the relationship truly loses its hold over you, and your life is no longer organized around surviving their behavior, but around fully living your own. The greatest victory after a narcissistic relationship is not making them jealous, proving them wrong, or waiting for the day they finally realize what they lost. It is reaching a place where their opinion no longer determines your peace, their actions no longer control your emotions, and their presence or absence no longer defines your future. No contact may create the distance you need, but true healing begins when your mind, your heart, and your identity are no longer tied to them. That is the moment the cycle truly ends. So if you are on this journey, remember that every step you take toward emotional freedom is a step away from manipulation and a step toward yourself. If this message resonated with you, do not forget to like this video, subscribe to the channel, and share it with someone who may need this reminder today. Your healing is not measured by how much they suffer. Here is something most survivors never realize until long after the relationship ends. The narcissist does not actually miss you as a person. They miss the version of you that was easy to control. They miss the access, the attention, and the emotional responses you used to give them. When that version of you disappears, they are not grieving a lost relationship. They are grieving lost control. And that distinction matters more than you might think because it changes everything about how you understand their behavior. If they reach out months later, it is rarely because they had some deep moment of reflection. It is usually because the new source of supply they found is no longer giving them what they wanted, so they return to the old source, hoping it still works. But when it does not, when you do not react the way you used to, something inside them shifts. They realize the old access point is closed, and that realization is far more devastating than silence alone. Think about it this way. No contact is a wall. It is visible and it is firm. But a narcissist can stare at a wall and still imagine what is behind it. They can tell themselves stories about why the wall is there. They can convince themselves you are just angry and will eventually come around. Emotional independence, on the other hand, is not a wall. It is an empty room where they used to stand and now there is nothing there for them. No reaction to feed on, no emotional wave to ride, no story to rewrite, just emptiness where their influence used to be. That is the difference between being blocked and being truly gone from someone's emotional world. One is a boundary, the other is a transformation, and only one of them creates lasting freedom. Here is where many survivors get stuck without realizing it. They go no contact, but they stay mentally plugged in. They check social media through mutual friends. They replay conversations in their head. They build imaginary arguments where they finally say the perfect thing. They wait for karma to do what they could not. And every single one of those actions, even though no direct contact is happening, keeps the emotional supply flowing. The narcissist does not need to hear from you to know you are still emotionally attached. Sometimes the absence of contact combined with the presence of obsession is enough to keep them feeling relevant. This is why true healing is never just about what you do outwardly. It is about what stops happening inside you. When you finally reach the point where their name does not change your breathing, their memory does not ruin your day, and their opinion does not shape your decisions, you have done something they never expected. You have become emotionally self-sufficient in a way that removes their role entirely. They are no longer a character in your story. They are just someone who used to be. And for a person who built their entire identity around being central in someone else's life, that is the most painful place to be. Not because you hurt them, because you simply stopped needing them. If this video is helping you see the bigger picture, hit that like button and subscribe, because the next one goes even deeper into patterns most people never recognize. Remember this: your healing was never meant to be a performance for them. You do not heal to send a message. You heal because your life belongs to you. Every moment you spend focused on your own growth is a moment they can never touch. And that is the real reason emotional independence hits harder than anything else. It cannot be faked. It cannot be used as a tactic. It is simply the result of someone who decided their peace was worth more than proving a point. So keep going, keep building, keep becoming the person you were always meant to be before their voice replaced your own. That is where the story ends, not with their suffering, but with your freedom. And that freedom, quiet and unshakable, is the one thing no narcissist can ever take from you. If this resonated with you, share it with someone who needs to hear it today, and remember that your healing is not measured by their pain, but by your peace.